The title of the message is The Way of Esau, which is an odd title. You don't get that phrase exactly out of the scripture, but it's real close. The Way of Esau. You find some ways given, people giving credit for having their own way in the Bible, and we'll find out about Esau's. In Genesis 25, let's begin in verse 27. It says, "And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison." That's a good reason. He brings me food. Just like your animals, they love you when you fill up the dish. That's the kind of love we're talking about here. Okay. But Rebekah loved Jacob because he did all the cooking for her. Okay. So neither of these loves seems to be real pure. They have ulterior motives behind them. And Jacob sawed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, "Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint." Therefore was his name called Edom, because Edom means red. Verse 31. And Jacob said, "Sell me this day thy birthright." And Esau said, "Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me?" And Jacob said, "Swear to me this day." And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drank, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. It says right there's a phrase in there. It says he went his way. Matter of fact, he's been going his way the whole time. He's trying to force everybody else to stay in his way too. The Bible tells us in 2 Peter, there's a way, it's called the way of Balaam. That one, he explained it to us. He says, he loved the wages of unrighteousness. That's the way of Balaam. That's loving money, unrighteousness, wages. The payoff for doing something unrighteous. There's another way, it's called the way of Cain. It's talked about in several places in the Bible. It's described to us in 1 John. He says his own works were evil. So some people, their whole life is they're focused on doing evil. And you'll meet people like that. They have a very specific way, and you can recognize it right off the bat. Esau's got a way as well. First thing I'll notice about Esau is in verse 27. Verse 27. I call this his self-willed. He's self-willed. It says in verse 27, Esau was a cunning hunter. Now, I don't know if you've done much hunting, but to hunt, you've got to be smarter than the animal you're hunting, which is not real easy to do. You know, animals are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. They got a nose that, they've got an advantage there. They can smell better than we can. No, they don't smell better than we can. But you know what I mean. They can pick up the traces of smell. They also can hear much better than we can. So if you're going to be a hunter, you've got to really know what you're doing. And I think Esau was one of the best. It says he was bringing home the bacon, only there wasn't any bacon that he was bringing home. That would have been outlawed. He was bringing home the beef. And so that would have been really worth something because there was no Walmart. He was the first Sam Walton. He says he's a cunning hunter, but that's because he's determined he's going to do it. That animal's not going to get by him. He's got a sneakier sense of capturing that animal than that animal does in getting away. He's self-determined. He's a man of the field, it said in our passage. That's a provider. He's prudent. He knows if I do this certain thing over here, this is the time these animals come out. I know they water at this watering hole over here. He's a man of the field. He's been out there. He knows the trails. The Bible gives us this phrase, the field, in several places. Matthew chapter 13. Matthew 13, verse 38, Jesus gives us a application of the phrase field. Matthew 13, 38. Jesus says, the field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The field there, he says, is the world. We'll apply it. Same is true. Esau was a man of the world. True enough. He was a man of the field. Look at another place this phrase shows up. Luke chapter 2. Luke chapter 2. Now y'all will know this faster than the old folks did at the old folks home. I'm hoping. I'm going to read this to you. I'm not giving you any context. I'm going to see if your mind will tell me where it is. Luke 2 verse 8. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. What's the storyline? That's right. The angels declaring and proclaiming Christ has been born. But it tells us there were shepherds in the field. Did not say the shepherds became the field. It did with Esau. Esau was a man of the field. Shepherds were just in the field. They weren't of the field. As Christians, you should be in the world, but not of the world. The other thing they're doing is these shepherds are doing something great. They're keeping watch on the sheep. Sheep aren't part of the field either. You should have some converts, some people you're discipling. Keep an eye on them. We're in this world. We can't get out of it till Jesus yanks us out of here. But in the meantime, keep an eye on them. Okay, watch out for them. That's a good thing to know. Look at it in John chapter 4. John chapter 4, verse 35. Jesus says this. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, then cometh the harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. He says when we're talking about souls, they're always in bloom. It's always time to go get a convert. Do something for God. Encourage a disciple or straighten one out. Do whatever you can. He says it's always time for that. That doesn't have a season. It's the season for that is now. It's always now. Isaac loved Esau. Now, you would think that's good, but I'm saying in our story, I think that makes him feel like he's popular. You know, he's a somebody. He's got, accolades and people are admiring him. That's a dangerous spot to be in. Man loves popularity and craves fame. However, it doesn't really satisfy, and it's not the thing man really thought it was going to be once he gets it. There's a lot of, find all the famous people in history that have committed suicide. It's crazy. Fame and fortune doesn't necessarily reap what the man thought it was going to. Else he wouldn't have blown his brains out. But that's where we find Esau. He's got the accolades. He's got the fame. He's got Isaac showing him love. Look at it in Luke 16. Luke 16, verse 15. Jesus says, And he said unto them, Ye are they which justify yourselves before men. Now, we all do that to some degree. I mean, because you think you're right. Nobody wants to think they're wrong. And if you think you are, you hopefully change it. Okay, so you justify yourself before men. That's true. He says, before men, but God knoweth your hearts. For that which is highly esteemed among men is abomination in the sight of God. Ooh. He says, obviously, according to the tone of the verse, he's saying they're justifying themselves before men, meaning they're making themselves appear right with man according to whatever man wants. They're chameleons. He says God looks down at that and he says that's an abomination. So don't try to get popular with men, because more than likely the result is going to be this: God looks down at it and says that's an abomination. I don't want him to say that. I'd rather be popular with God than with man. And sometimes those are not equal. When you're popular with God, you're probably not popular with man. Look at all of his Old Testament prophets. They were not very popular. Now, we think of them as popular. The Bible's got them in there all over the place. However, if they were walking the streets, they would not be popular. And they won't be in tribulation either. Look at John chapter 12. John 12, verse 42. This is an interesting passage. It tells us what was going on in Jesus' day with the high mucky-de-mucks. John 12, verse 42. Nevertheless, among the chief rulers also, many believed on him. How about that? The ruling class, the religious leaders, many of them believed on Jesus Christ. But because of the Pharisees, they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue. Oh, we don't want to lose our position. Our claim to fame is that we run the synagogue. But if we tell people we believe in Jesus, we'll be kicked out. I'm sorry, your ritual's worth zero if it makes you ashamed of Jesus. Wow. Belief didn't go very far, did it? Didn't go far enough. A lot of people believe that Jesus was a historic figure, but they won't go any farther than that. If your belief doesn't hit your feet, it wasn't worth much to begin with, was it? Look at it in verse 44. He says, for they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. Didn't say they don't love God. Said they just love the praise of man more. Now, it's easy to fall into that trap because we like for people to think good of us and well of us. That's true, and they should. However, we should always remember it's God we want to think good of us, not so much man. Now, we don't want to offend man on purpose. However, this flesh naturally strives to please man. We've got to force the mind to realize it's not man we want to please, it's God.
Amen.
He says these people love the praise of men more than of God. So that tells you God can praise you. Now, won't that be a day? Get to heaven and hear God praise you? That's something to strive for. Look at it in Jude chapter 1, verse 16. I always say Jude 1. There's only one chapter. If you can find another one, quote that one too. Jude verse 16. He says these are murmurers, complainers. Why didn't he just say millennials? I don't know. No. He said he says these are murmurers, complainers, walking after their own lust, and their mouth speaking great swelling words, having men's persons in admiration because of advantage. Now, he just cut right to the quick. The reason most people want people to like them is because they want to get an advantage. Oh, we're good buddies. I can get a good deal down at that place. See how that goes? He says men are just naturally selfish. And usually what we do is we want to be thought of as, a good person or a good, reasonable person. And so we make buddies with people we think can help us. Something in it for me. That's Esau. Esau's all about himself. The next thing I'll see is self-sufficient. That's Esau. He thinks he's self-sufficient anyway. In verse 29 and verse 30 it says this, and Esau said to Jacob, feed me. Now I think that's important. He's demanding. He walks in there. It did not say, and Esau asked Jacob, could you feed me? Wouldn't that be nice? But he didn't do that. Esau walks in and says, Jacob, feed me. Uses the word said, not ask. Okay, so he's going to demand something. You'll find people like that. If they're having a bad day, stay out of the way. Because they're getting real demanding. I'll tell you where it really strikes. You'll find this in yourself too. Look in the mirror next time you get hungry. When hunger strikes, politeness goes out the window. That's where we found Esau. Now that tells us something. We've got to really fight this flesh. Because what's natural for us to do is, I'm in a bad mood, therefore it's okay. No, it's not okay. I'm hungry, therefore it's... No, it's not. Don't be an Esau.
They call it hangry.
Hangry, that's right. I say he's also deceived. He says, for I am faint. I'm going to die here. He goes on and says that in a minute. Little exaggeration. But that's the way we get when we get, to the end of our rope and we're fed up. Exaggeration becomes okay, but it's not. That's what Esau did. Look at it in 1 Samuel 25. 1 Samuel 25. I can fly on this story. I couldn't at the old folks' home. I turned to this passage over there at the old folks' home, and then I thought, they don't know what this passage is. I've got to tell the whole story. 1 Samuel 25, verse 3. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding and a beautiful countenance. But the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. He had a good upbringing. It doesn't matter what your environment is, you'll be what you decide you're going to be. Esau decided it's going to all be about me. I know that I'm a twin, and maybe I look like Sissy Boy over there, but I ain't going to act like him. And that's where he was. Look down at verse 17. Now therefore know and consider what thou wilt do, for evil is determined against our master, and against all his house, for he is such a son of Belial that a man cannot speak to him. You find people like that? Can't even reason with them. Can't talk to them. When they get their mind made up, it's done. You can't question it. Well, that's the way Esau was. He had already decided, and nobody was going to give him any input. He didn't want none. Look down at verse 25. Let not my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal. For as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thy handmaid, saw not the young men of my Lord whom thou didst send. She says, he's just like his name. He's a fool. Therefore, so was Esau. Foolish. It's his way or the highway. You'll do exactly what he wants, and he's not listening to you say anything else. In 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 2, the Bible says this, and that we may be delivered from unreasonable and wicked men. For all men hath not faith. That is a good prayer, especially in our age we live in now. And not just the lost world. Christians can be just like this too, unreasonable. Ask God to eliminate these unreasonable and wicked men from your life and women. That sounded too harsh for it to all just be on men. You're picking on men. Humans, that's true. God can clear a path for you. And that's what prayer is all about. Now, I'm not saying that you should have a comfy, flowery life. But if you want one, you want to have that, don't you? Yeah, we want it. Nobody willingly wants to be persecuted. I don't think. You got other problems if you do. But pray. He's given the example here. You can pray to God and ask him to eliminate some of these wicked problems from your life. Pray that we stay away from Esau's. Now, first of all, pray we don't become an Esau. But secondly, pray God keeps the Esau's out of our path. That's a good prayer to have. Here's what you should be. James chapter 3. James 3 verse 17, he says this, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated. Sounds like a Bible believer, doesn't it? It should. Easy to be entreated. You shouldn't get your feelings all hurt when somebody has a different opinion than you. It should be easy to be entreated. You should welcome them to speak. Okay, what's your thought on that? Okay, let me give you mine. Let's get the Bible out and find out what God's is. A lot of times it's different than even mine is. He says, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. That's what we ought to be. That's not what Esau was. The last thing I'll see in our passage in Genesis 25, verse 32, I call this self-righteous. That's where we all go. You know, the name of the game is righteousness. To get to heaven, you got to have righteousness. The Old Testament, every man was seeking righteousness. Now, the problem is, how do you get it? Because it's different. Man always tried to strive and find some way of doing it. You find men today trying to work their way to heaven. That's them seeking righteousness. Here, Esau is self-righteous. He thinks anything he does is okay. Even if it hurts somebody else, it doesn't matter. He's justified it in his mind. In verse 32 it says this, and Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? Profit me. It's got to profit me. Not everything in life has to profit you. Matter of fact, if you've looked back, very few things have. He says profit. There's got to be some value added to me or I'm out of this. Now, this is the odd thing. He's chosen the wrong time to be a bully. He has a need. When you have a need, do you think you come in and act bold and brash like a bull in the china shop? That's what he's doing. And he's the one who has the need. You'll find people like that. Doesn't matter. Everybody is supposed to bow to their will. That's an Esau. It's got to profit me. In verse 34 he says this, and he did eat and drank and rose up and went his way. Remember, this guy was about to die about 2 seconds ago. He finally got what he wanted. Doesn't clean up, doesn't do the dishes, doesn't say thank you. Got his food and is gone. Don't hear another word from him. Oh, but wait until he's hungry again. He'll be back. That's an Esau. An Esau has no value beyond the food that he's got right in front of him. Same was with his birthright. His birthright meant nothing to him, but it was a great commodity to trade for food. But nowhere in the birthright did it say the birthright has a value of such and such. Birthright worth 3 bowls of pottage. Doesn't say that. He made it into that though, and then flippantly got up and left and didn't care. In conclusion, in Romans chapter 9, a verse you all know, it says, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. God hated Esau. Therefore, it's imperative that we find out what God hated about Esau and be sure we're not following in Esau's path. There's a way of Esau and it's wicked. We need to stay out of it. I've got a bunch more verses I'm going to skip for you. I'll pick up one more verse. In Genesis 27, verse 42, it says this. And these words of Esau, her elder son, were told to Rebekah. And she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said unto him, behold, thy brother Esau, as touching thee, doth comfort himself, purposing to kill thee. Murder's in his mind, and he's getting comfort out of the fact that he's determined in his mind, one day I'm murdering that little boy. That brat stole my birthright that I offered. But I'm going to kill him for taking it. Okay. He worked a bad deal, but the deal was set up by him. And now his idea is, oh, it didn't work out like I wanted. I'm going to throw a fit. Matter of fact, I'm going to kill him and we'll forget that it ever happened. Whew. Don't be an Esau, but also pray that God deliver you from the path of anybody who is an Esau. I'm going to give you a little poem and then we'll be done. This is on Esau. It says, Esau, full of sloth and no shame, gullible as a moth drawn to a flame, having forgot what a high price was paid, that liberty's value doth abate instead of appreciate. Without fight we sit in our cottage and trade our birthright for a mess of pottage. From the way of Esau, take flight. Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. Make sure when you're taking a path in this life, it's not the way of Esau.